So, being an executive or a leader can come with a bunch of unique experiences and a bunch of unique challenges. As a leader or as an exec, you have to make decisions under high pressure situations with very little information. You probably have a large amount of influence and you have to lead teams to success measures that your organization has already identified. So, what happens when those outside successes and experiences, including your six-figure salary, if that's what you're making, starts to not align with what your end goals are, or you start to get that itch inside you that says, is this all there is? For me, this feeling translated into years, and I quite literally mean years of frustrated conversations with my husband, drinking glass after glass of wine in the yard, thinking, I have to get out of this job. It's not that I don't enjoy the people, because I actually did. It's not that I really even disliked the role. It was the fact that I didn't feel like what I was doing aligned with who I was as a person anymore and didn't align with what I really wanted in my life. But here's the rub. When you have that kind of money coming in and you have a semblance of security and you've built a life for yourself, I have three children who depend on me. I have a husband, a dog, a mortgage, car payments, all the things all the trappings of life that we built up for ourselves. When we have that in our lives, then it makes it a lot harder for us to think about shifting. So if you're really wondering, is this really time for me to leave? Is this really time for me to let go? Is this really time for me to say goodbye to my 9 to 5 or my executive role, or maybe the role I'm in? I have 5 signs in this video I want to share with you that maybe it's time to reconsider your role. So welcome back to the Executive Exhale podcast / YouTube channel. I'm super happy to have you here and I appreciate the time you're taking to watch this. Today, I want to talk about those 5 signals, those 5 signs that maybe it's time for you to reconsider your career path. And the reason I bring this up is because this was me just a few years ago. I was really struggling as an exec. I was making 6 figures. I had a bonus structure that I was adhering to. I had staff reporting to me. I had very large obligations and responsibilities. But I just felt like my life was out of alignment. I felt like there was something missing. Something wasn't adding up for me. And here are the 5 things that came across my life that I want to share with you, because these are the things that start to make me realize maybe it's time for me to reconsider my career path. The first thing was I felt disconnected from the mission or from the work itself. When I first joined the public service, which was my second career, I was a registered nurse before working in critical care. But when I first joined the public service in 2003 during the first COVID OG response, or SARS, I felt really compelled by the mission of the Public Health Agency, or Health Canada at that time. And I really felt like I was performing a service in protecting Canadians from communicable disease. And so for me, the idea was to go in there and affect change and implement new programming that would help support and protect the health of Canadians. I felt very driven by that mission, and I did that for 18 years. I felt driven by that mission. Well, if I'm honest, at least the first 10 to 15. And then I started to sort of see that disillusionment start to come forward. But over time, I started to see shifts in how decisions were made. I started to see shifts in how much politics influenced everything we did. I mean, it sounds like a stupid thing to say, Tammy, of course you work for the public service. Of course, politics is an issue. But for me at the time, when I was doing very operational roles, politics was less of an issue, but it became more and more apparent over time that that was becoming more and more the influence, and politicians were actually getting involved in very frontline conversations and very operational decisions. The other thing that started to frustrate me was I was in a bureaucracy. So a lot of the independence and leadership that I was trying to exercise and demonstrate was sort of squandered or squashed by the bureaucracy that I had to work within. And I understand the reasons for that. And it's not that it doesn't make sense. It's just that for me, it just didn't sit right. In addition to all of that, I actually felt like I had somehow lost track or lost touch with that one-on-one connection I had with clients out in the field. So when I worked in the emergency department, for example, I had that sort of tangible one-on-one connection with somebody in the emergency department. So essentially, you came in, you were having a heart attack, we gave you a medicine, you felt better. That was like an instant gratification piece. But when you work for big P policy programs in a government setting that rolls out over 3, 5, and 10 years, you don't get that sort of instant gratification. And you lose that, for me at least, as a healthcare provider, I lost that connection to the human at the end of that policy. And so I felt more and more compelled to work with individuals and more to work with organizations to affect change on individuals, because I really needed that feedback. I needed that connection that I wasn't getting in my role anymore. The second sign that maybe it's time for you to reconsider your role is that the stress is actually starting to impact your health and well being. Being in a leadership position, it's kind of a no brainer. Stress is just a part of the equation. Let's be frank, right? So I knew that going in when I accepted to become an exec in the public service, and I knew that in my leadership roles prior to that. But the thing was, is that my body started to tell me over time that it was not happy anymore, right? I was starting to pack on the pounds. And yes, perimenopause was a part of that process, but I started putting on weight. My cortisol levels were through the roof, and I had had some assessments done. And turns out my adrenals were starting to shut down. So I was starting to have things like fatigue, headaches, and all sorts of other symptoms. And during COVID, in my second burnout experience, I actually had a lot of gastrointestinal issues to the point where I needed an emergency colonoscopy because I actually thought I had cancer. Turns out it wasn't cancer, it was inflammatory responses, and I was being hijacked. My body was essentially being hijacked by stress, and it was telling me that it couldn't take it anymore. My blood pressure was going up. I was having all sorts of mood swings. I was exhausted, but yet I couldn't sleep. I was, like I said, gaining weight. I was drinking far too much alcohol. I was doing all the things. And so for me, my body was starting to reject that. And I had to start to listen to it, because what happens is if you don't listen to your body, it will force you to listen to it. It'll shut you down, whether you like it or not. So all to say that your health is your most valuable asset. Without that, you can't do anything. You can't support your family. You can't be of any help to anybody. You can't even support yourself if you don't have your own health. So your health, if it's being degraded by the role that you're in and you're feeling drained every day, chances are you really should start thinking about changing or shifting your career path. The third thing is that you're no longer growing. So if you feel bored in your job every day, or we thrive on challenge. If you're not feeling challenged by the job that you're taking on every day and everything feels routine, like you're on a treadmill and you're just getting back on the treadmill, it's the same thing day in and day out, like Groundhog Day, then chances are you're probably in need of a shift or a change. Because the truth is without some kind of stretch, without some kind of challenge, you're going to feel stagnated and you're not going to grow in your career. And as a result, you might lose your opportunity to be promotionable later, because if you're not growing in your career, you're not growing your skills, it's going to be a lot harder for you to compete for those upper level positions later. So if you're starting to feel stagnated, you're starting to feel bored, like things aren't challenging you and it's just like every day's routine, maybe it's time to think about changing your career. The fourth thing is that you're only staying for the paycheck. Staying for the money is, of course, important. Money is what drives the world we live in. Unfortunately, that is the capitalistic world we live in, especially here in North America. And it is what we exchange in terms of energy exchange. It's what we exchange for the things that we have in our lives and for the freedom that we do have in our lives. And for executives and leaders, we've worked damn hard to make those six figures. People think that it comes easy. It doesn't come easy. We've had to train or get certified or have experiences or lead things that were really hard and challenging to be able to make the money we're making. And so we feel proud of that. And that's perfectly fine. It's good. But for me, one of the biggest drivers for me staying in the job miserable and burned out was the money. I was like, wow, like where else am I going to be able to make this kind of cash doing what I'm doing? So if I was honest with myself, that's what was going through my head at that time, is that the money was really my handcuff. So if the money is the only reason you're staying in a job, that is a huge red flag for you, a huge red flag, because I have news for you. You need to stop gaslighting yourself and telling yourself, you know what, the money's good, I should be grateful. Yes, you should be grateful. And I would say that you should also look at what opportunities, what skills do you currently have that you can parlay into something else that will pay you as good or better potentially, that you can do in a different field that would make you feel more fulfilled, more joy, more balance. If that sounds like a pipe dream, I'm telling you, I know people personally who are doing this, including myself, and I just want you to know that it is possible. Of course, financial comfort is all part of the decision. And when I work with my clients, when they talk about wanting to make career shifts, one of the things I always advise to them is before you make any decisions about what you want to do with your career, always, always, always go to your financial advisors, talk to them about your current financial status. How much money do you think you're going to need in terms of laneway? And get yourself prepared for that. And don't just jump ship, because that's a very big mistake. And if I had to tell myself again, all over again, that would be the thing, is stay in the job for a little bit longer, plan your exit strategy just a little bit better so that you have a little bit more runway. Now, I pulled my retirement, which allowed me to fund my business building, which I was in a very privileged place to do so, but a lot of people don't have that. And so there's things you need to do financially. So obviously, if money is the only thing holding you back, then let's look at where you can start shifting your money story so that you can start to move forward on something else. Maybe there's some plans you can put in a place or accounting decisions you can make now that will support your departure, 6, 8, 12, 24 months from now. And the last and final thing I'm going to say is your personal life is suffering. This is a big one where you'll see execs having issues with their relationships. So, a lot of my clients have struggles in their marriage. And the reason why they have challenges in their marriage is because they're bringing the stress from work home. I know for me, I was tired. I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want to be bothered. I didn't want to be talked to. I just wanted to be left alone. I wanted to be alone in my room. I would isolate. I have kids who need me. And yet I was self isolating because that was how I was surviving. The thing is when you're overstressed, overtaxed, and miserable in your job, you're bringing that into every relationship, into every conversation, into every emotion that you're feeling in the people around you. So if your life is starting to fall apart outside of work, chances are it's linked to that career path that you're on. So take a really good hard look at what you're doing and how you can start making changes so that you can start to improve the things that really matter to you. The things that, the people that are going to be talking at your funeral and actually are going to miss you are the ones you want to think about, really, at the end of the day, because I left my job and within 2 months I was replaced. Well, recognizing that it's time for you to leave your career is one thing, but taking action is another. They're two completely separate things. If you've made the decision that, yes, maybe it's time for me to reconsider my career, my path, what I'm doing, I'm going to stop you for a minute and say, okay, let's look at your action plan and start looking at steps for you to start moving forward. You may say to yourself, oh my gosh, like I'm leaving this long-standing career after all this invested time. What a waste of my life. Reality is no, it's not a waste because everything you learned in those time frames or during that time can be applied in whatever next steps you have. In fact, you're not starting over, you're starting from experience. So the idea here is to look at what you have, what you bring to the table, and figuring out what would align best with you. All I'm going to say is that planning for the next step doesn't have to be overwhelming. It most certainly is not something you need to do by yourself. If this is something that you want help with, you can book a call with me and we'll just do a strategy call. No sales, no hot nothing online, just a clear conversation about where you are now, where you want to go, and what's like the first 3 steps you can start taking to start moving yourself in that direction, just so we can get you on an action plan of some sort. So if this is something that's remotely interesting to you, just book it in my calendar. Let's have a conversation. And depending on when you watch this, there may or may not be a 5-step reset framework or system document or PDF in the show notes. They may not be there yet. And if that's the case, just favorite this video, come back to it because I will be putting together a 5-step reset or framework for you to start thinking about how to shift your career, because it's important that you know what the steps were that I took so that I could escape my 6-figure role and do the job that I'm doing now as an executive coach. So I want to help you get to where you want to be so it feels more aligned, more in tune with who you are. And some of the tactics I use are a little bit out there. They're not necessarily as standard as the regular coaches out there. I use a lot of mindfulness, a lot of heart-centered stuff, and that might seem woo-woo, but honestly, it helped me to process, to figure things out, and to clear my mind so that I could actually be creative and come up with strategy. And I just want to thank you for watching this, and I wish you well out there because I know the challenge of feeling completely stuck in a job that you're not feeling fulfilled by and feeling stuck because you can't leave because of the money. So I get it. I hear you, and I'm here to help you. Thanks again for being here today. Remember, folks, to stay inspired, stay grounded, and remember to exhale.